Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kurt Dietrich, Superintendent. I just have to tell you, I am very thrilled that you're willing to commit your time to join us today to talk about our efforts in North Penn. We had the call to action that went out a few weeks ago, and it was very important to me that it was more than just saying, there's a problem here, and it's kind of the same old, same old. It was more, look, we need your help. We really need you to get involved and assist us in our efforts. For the last year now, we had 4 very important cultural proficiency subcommittees meeting to talk about, those goals and to report progress on those. And tonight or this afternoon, we're going to talk about those. But very importantly, we need your involvement. We don't want this just to be, you hear from us. We need to be able to hear from you, and we need to get feedback from you about how you can be helpful to us. So those 4 goals, have to do with building cultural proficiency of our staff, dealing with disproportionality and addressing that head on and making substantive change in that regard. Hiring, again, same thing, dealing with that head on and making substantive change in that regard. And then very importantly, the student, the family, the staff engagement. And in the past, we've had some parents involved, but I felt like we need more parents. We need to have the engagement of many more to be able to address these issues that confront us as a school district. I've said it before, I'm disappointed where we are as a country. It's 2020, and I'm just so disappointed that we're not at a better place as a country. And then we look at, a country is made up of many states. States are made up of many, many school districts, and 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, and we are one of those. So we need to be able to jump in and tackle this head on, and we need your help. So with that, I'm going to turn it to the 2 co-chairs, Jenna Rufo and Deanna Waters, and they'll take it. We have some slides prepared for you. We're going to, I think, run through those next. So I'm going to throw it to you, Jenna and Deanna.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jenna Rufo. I am one of the assistant superintendents here in North Penn, and along with Dr. Deanna Waters, I co-chair the Cultural Proficiency Committee. When we were talking about tonight's panel, however, we thought it was important, even just in our language, to expand it beyond cultural proficiency. I mean, that's a term that not everyone is always very familiar about, but what it really is looking at is the idea of being comfortable and looking at yourself and your own experiences with race in order to understand others. But we also wanted to be very explicit that we also want this to be an anti-racism group. And that we're taking some really active steps. And we're going to begin just by sharing those steps with you. Before we do that, though, I will let Dr. Waters introduce herself, and then she will introduce our panel, and we'll move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Rufo. Hi, everybody. I'm Deanna Waters. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are really excited about the numbers who responded and said, hey, I want to help. We've been working really hard and have some great things in place, but we always want to improve, and we know that we can do better. So we're looking forward to partnering with you in our efforts. I am the Director of Curriculum and Equity. I've been in this role for about 9 months now. Prior to that, I was a building principal at Hatfield Elementary for about 11 years. And I also taught in our school district at the elementary level primarily, and also spent some time at one of our middle schools. So my entire career has been in North Penn, and I love North Penn. I've seen a lot of changes in North Penn. And again, we're just trying to do our part to continue to be the best district in Montgomery County. So we are all going to take a minute to just introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about our background. I know one of our questions from one of you was, is our panel diverse? And so we all have some different backgrounds, and we've had different experiences, but we are all really committed to this work and doing everything we can to make sure all of our students feel safe and welcome and meet success to their highest potential in our district. So I'm just going to go to the top of my screen, but you know what, before that, I'm going to jump to our moderator, our other assistant superintendent, Dr. Bauer.
Good afternoon or evening, everyone. My name is Todd Bauer, assistant superintendent, along with Dr. Rufo. Prior to this, I served the district as a high school principal. I've been a part of the executive committee for cultural proficiency, I think, for the last 4 years. Most specifically, I've worked in subcommittee number 3, with Mr. Yum. He'll tell you more about Subcommittee 3. And while I think, like my colleagues here on the panel, I can't claim to sit here and have all the answers, but I do care, and I do want to make us better. And I think moments like this make us all better. So I just want to thank you for being here and engaging with us and helping us get to that place that Dr. Dietrich described, where, you know, we're disappointed where we are, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying to get to the place we want to be. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Yoon, Dave.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Yum. I'm the school climate coordinator at General Nash and Gwinnett Square Elementary. I've been a part of the Cultural Proficiency Group for 12 years, but for the last 2 years, I've joined the Cultural Proficiency Executive Committee and have been co-chairing goal number 3, which is the hiring and retention of staff of color. And just really excited about all the work that we've been doing and what we've been going to be sharing in the future.
Thank you. Christina Carter.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Christina Carter. I'm the principal of AM Culp Elementary. I've been in the district for about 1.5 years, and I am the co-chair of goal number 2, disproportionality. I'm very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and have worked on different committees in other districts that I've worked in to make sure that we continue to make progress for many of our Black and Brown students, and working to just help further the cultural proficiency of all students.
Thank you. Mr. Goslin.
Hi, Mark Goslin. I'm on the Cultural Proficiency Executive Committee. I also chair the subcommittee that looks at disproportionality. I'm really excited to join you guys and work alongside of all these folks to make our schools a better place for our families of color, and share the experiences that I have along the way working with different populations, ranging from Cambodian refugee communities to students who escaped from the Middle East during wartime and resettled in the United States, and then everyone else of color that we work with at North Penn as well. So I'm really excited to work with everybody and continue to learn and grow myself and my own cultural competency as we move forward. So thank you for everyone for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Cavone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Cabone. I have the great pleasure of serving as principal at North Wales Elementary School. I've been involved with the cultural cadre and the executive committee probably for the better part of 10 years in different roles. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited that we're having this conversation and to continue to have these conversations and these opportunities to continue to learn and grow together as a North Penn community. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us.
Thank you. Dr. D.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Marjorie Dieg. I am starting my 13th year here in North Penn School District. This is my first year as Assistant Director of Human Resources. Prior to that, for about a little over 1.5 years, I was an assistant principal at North Penn High School. And prior to that, I spent the previous years as a school counselor at North Penn High School. So similar to Dr. Waters, my entire career has been here at North Penn. I love North Penn, and I have a passion in reference to diversity and culture, specifically how it addresses our students and their needs. So I'm very excited to be a part of the panel tonight. I've been a part of the executive committee for about 3 years now, and I co-chair Goal 4, which is increasing student, staff, and family engagement. So just very excited to be able to be present to see how far we've come at North Penn and how much further we're going to go.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Taylor. I'm one of the assistant principals at North Penn High School. I'm actually finishing my first year in the district. Prior to that, I spent 7 years in Downingtown area school district as an international baccalaureate teacher, and then prior to that, 3 years in the school district of Philadelphia. A big reason for me pursuing this career is because I was a student who, unfortunately, was probably the statistics of disproportionality in the sense that I was lower tracked because I'm an African American male, and I had to overcome a lot of more barriers than other students would have just because of my ascribed status. So that's why this work in education is very important to me. It's very purposeful because I want to try to help mitigate the negative effects it disproportionately has, not only just in North Penn, but throughout schools in our entire country.
Thank you. Dr. Santoro?
Hello, everyone. I'm Betty Santoro, and I'm the Director of Elementary Education. I've been in the school district for 17 years, and prior to my role as Director of Elementary, I was the Special Ed Director for 2 years, and then before that, I was the Principal of Blue North for 10. So I have been involved in this work for many, many years. I think this was the first team that I joined when I was an employee of the school district. This work is very important to me because prior to coming to North Penn, I served in school district of Philadelphia, where we always had the motto and the belief that all means all. So I think that we need to continue to put our best foot forward in all of our efforts to make sure that every student has equity and access. So this is really important work, and I'm just pleased to say that, you know, we have really grown as a committee and as these subcommittees over the years, and I just really think that partnering with parents and hearing from parents is really valued. So I do appreciate that you're on this call today, and I look forward to our future conversations.
Thank you. Ms. Rudnick?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kunbi Rudnick. I am not a teacher in the school district. So I am a parent. I've been in the school district for about 7 years now. I'm a working mom. I work for a local pharmaceutical company, but my daughters go to Montgomery Elementary, and my older one is actually going to be going to Pembroke next year. I have been involved in the cultural proficiency space with this team probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. And I am the chair of the Montgomery Elementary Multicultural Committee.
Thank you. Ms. Early?
Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Early. I am a curriculum supervisor for the Secondary Humanities, and I also supervise our English language development program for the district. I've been fortunate enough to be on the executive committee for the last 2 years, chairing the Goal 1, which is centered on culturally responsive instruction and how to really close that opportunity gap that we have for students. So I've been fortunate enough to work in the district for 5 years, and I'm just happy to be here and learn and grow along with everyone to make sure that we meet the needs of all of our English learners and all students.
Thank you. Dr. Kim?
Hello, everyone. I'm Mia Kim. As of today, I'm wrapping up my week number 2 in North Penn. So I'm a newcomer. I feel very fortunate when Dr. Waters approached me about the opportunity to be the co-chair along with Mr. Yum to address goal number 3, which is to, increase our diversity staffing pool for the district. It's a passion of mine and has been for some time. I have been an elementary teacher, middle school teacher, and an elementary principal, in addition to being in charge of HR for a very large school district, not quite as large as North Penn, I admit, but also, in a suburban as well as rural areas. So again, I am looking forward to collaborating with everyone to help make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students and that it's a safe learning environment for everyone.
All right, thank you so much. So this is the majority on this call are our executive committee members, and if they're not on the executive committee, they are on one of our committees. So thank you all for taking the time out today to be here. All right.
If I can interrupt really quick.
Sure.
So received a couple questions in the Q&A section, and Mr. Gilmer on the back end has shared that there have been some hand raising. So we're going to go through our presentation here, and we have received some questions in advance in response to the email communication that came out, but you can continue to utilize the Q&A section and we can respond directly to you, or if we have time at the end to add to the list of questions that we've already received and plan to address, we'll address them at that time. So those are the best ways to get in touch, and I'll continue to moderate as we go along.
Thank you. I don't even see the chat, so thank you. All right, so as Dr. Bauer just mentioned, we're going to take you through our subcommittee so that you can first see some of the work that we have been doing. And again, we're looking forward to partnering with you because we want to continue to get better. So, you know, like I think he said earlier, we don't have all the answers, but we are willing to just do everything we can to continue to work and grow and enhance what's already in place. So I'm just going to ask Bob if you could start the slideshow, and we'll turn it over to the chairs of our first goal.
I just want to make sure you guys can see the first slide there.
Yes, thank you.
So the first slide here is what our vision is in terms of our cultural proficiency and anti-racism efforts. And I won't read it to you, or this is North Penn's vision rather, but one of the big things that we've added when we had our new comprehensive plan was really equitable opportunities and a respect for human differences. So that is something that while we have always been committed to it, we have called out specifically just in our overall North Penn vision.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Joe Cavone, and I am one of the co-chairs for Goal 1, the subcommittee. And Goal 1 really focuses on culturally responsive teaching practices, cultural proficiency, and our work to reduce and eliminate the achievement/opportunity gap. Through our work on this goal, a lot of what we wanted to focus on was researching, developing and implementing a framework for culturally responsive teaching instruction, ongoing professional development for all staff, including teachers, support staff, administrators, embedding our work through all that we do at each of our schools, in our school plans, and throughout all of our professional development. And then as we continue to move through and focus on our curriculum resources, materials, and the instruction that we do, connecting our cultural proficiency work to that content and to the materials that we use. So I'll pass it off to my co-chair, Ms. Early, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the work we've done in this realm.
Thank you, Joe. So here's some examples of specific items that have been accomplished that fall with under the bullet points that Joe just mentioned. The first is the creation of a framework for culturally responsive instruction. And this is something that we were able to send out for professional development at the end of this past school year that we're continuing to build on. And that's going to be a resource for teachers to draw from. And it's really important because it's almost like a lens for how teachers teach. In terms of the curriculum. It's kind of like a pair of glasses that they put on whenever they're talking about a piece of literature or a historical event, you know, making sure that they have that lens when they instruct. Some other examples, we have a cadre led by Dr. Barbara Moore-Williams. For all teachers in the district, we now have a specific cadre at the high school, which includes both teachers and students. Cultural proficiency strategies and/or action steps are in every single school goal plan. We also have, of course, cultural proficiency dedicated time in our professional development calendar. Last year, our administrators group has received specific professional development on disproportionality from Dr. Eddie Fergus. And we also had specific professional development for our support staff members. And that was something that we did over the COVID closure because, of course, it's important that all staff, that we have training tailored to all of our staff groups.
As we transition into Goal 2, there was just a question about disproportionality, and that's all what Goal 2 is about. Mr. Gosselin and Ms. Carter, if you could just begin by explaining disproportionality for anyone who might not be familiar with that term.
Okay, so
Go ahead, Mark, go ahead.
Christina and I work on chairing this committee, and disproportionality is it's kind of a complex idea, but I'll try to simplify it the best that I can. Really what it looks at is making sure that we don't have over or underrepresentation of certain groups in unnatural proportions in different areas of our district. So we look at the trying to make sure that we have equal representation in things like our most advanced courses at the high school level, and our gifted and talented education programs, and reducing the overrepresentation of marginalized groups in things like school discipline referrals, suspension rates, special education identification. And so we're trying to make sure that we're keeping an eye on our data and making sure that we're looking at some of the systemic things that underline those results that we see. We still have some work to do in this area for sure, but that's kind of where we're heading with disproportionality. Christina, is there something that I missed in addressing the idea, or Jenna, if I didn't explain that clear enough, feel free to jump in.
No, Mark, I think you did a great job.
All right, so I'll just continue with our slide then. And then Christine will pick up our second slide to talk about some of the work that we've done. So our goal, as I said, is to reduce that underrepresentation or overrepresentation of different ethnic or racial groups in different elements of our academic programming, and also in our behavior data. So we do a lot of work to try to communicate these trends to staff to make them aware that these things are happening. This is difficult work because we're not trying to say to our staff that you're intentionally taking up a racist stance in the decision making that you have in your day-to-day practice. However, we can't ignore the data. We see patterns and trends that exist, and so we need to make sure that folks are aware of those things, and we start to critically think about why we're seeing that data as outcomes. We work on professional development also with our administrators in how to analyze the disproportionality in their schools and their programs. We also look at probably one of the gateways to where the data comes from, and that's our testing and protocols of our student populations and how fair and how biased those testing protocols may be. And so we're really trying to exert some significant effort in growing in that area. Looking at culturally sensitive assessments for gifted and special education. Some of those protocols are very culturally loaded. And so, research shows that certain populations test in certain ways on these measures based on some of the cultural knowledge that they bring to the test. So that's something that we're aware of and we're working on. We are constantly looking at our data of students of color who enrolled in gifted courses and also our highest math and science courses at the high school level. And we're really trying to have those tough conversations to investigate the possible causes of what is leading to those outcomes. And Christina, you can share the next slide about some of the work that we've done over the last few years.
Thanks, Mark. So over the past few years, we really have looked at reviewing district-wide and identifying trends that relate to the academic performance and discipline. It's really looking at what are the barriers keeping our students who we have identified as being disproportionately in lower achieving courses or disproportionately receiving suspensions or anything else discipline-wise. We've also worked to look at the MTSS team, which is the multi-tier systems and support team that look at academics and behavior and what barriers are preventing students from learning, and seeing is there anything within our system that is causing our students to be disproportionate. We also have researched the gifted screening tools and looked at some updated screening processes to see what are some other ways that some of our students we're finding are not getting into gifted. Is it the screening assessment that is the cause, but they can still qualify for it based off of another test? So that's what we're really assessing at that point and looking at. For the middle school science, math, ELA, social studies, collapsing levels to minimize disproportionality. So collapsing a level that you normally found a lot of our Black and brown students were in, that they could actually, which I believe it's the level 4, I'm an elementary person, so I'm not as familiar with the language, but level 4, that they can actually be in courses with other students and that level was not necessary. and working on ongoing consultation with Dr. Eddie Fergus, where he really has worked with the administration and the high school in particular to help us gain the tools on how to break down the data and understand the data that we're looking at every day and how that data can affect how teachers and staff make their decisions as we move forward.
Okay, so hello, my name is Davion again, and I'll be talking on goal 3, which is the implementing of practices that promote a pool of diverse candidates for positions across all employee groups. And so, Dr. Kim, I'm going to ask you if you want to chime in at any time, as you know, you're new to this position, to feel free to jump in. But I'll just highlight some of the things that we've been working on and have planned for the future as well. So we've developed promotional materials highlighting North Penn's diverse community and conduct outreach efforts to recruit diverse candidates. So when we go to job fairs, we hand out different pamphlets and different advertisements for them to see. And also we've been developing staffing patterns that support placement of at least 2 diverse staff in every school for increased retention of staff, and also for our students of color to be able to see a diverse staff, a staff that, you know, matches the community as much as possible. And another thing that we've been doing is soliciting feedback from current diverse staff members on what attracted them to North Penn and what keeps them there or here. And also we've been doing implementing a Hire Your Own program to attract current North Penn students to the education field while in high school. And you'll see some of the things that we've been doing in the next couple slides. If we can go to the next slide. So like I said, we've updated marketing materials and the district website. We've reached out and shared promotional materials with local universities. We've been in contact with HBCUs, which, so HBCU, for those of you that don't know, are historically Black colleges and universities. And we've been establishing a partnership. And unfortunately, we did have, we were planning to go to a job fair in Howard, but, you know, things kind of got stopped with this whole pandemic. So we're going to be working with them and some other HBCUs in the area to see if we can partner and attend more of their job fairs. We're also part of the Delaware Valley Coalition for Equity and Excellence, and we've attended NCIU's Diversity Fair and University job fairs. And this past year, we've developed an EDU 100 course for with colleges for a dual purpose for students interested in education as part of our Hire Your Own initiative. In the fall, we had 9 students, and in the spring, we had 26 students, which was really excellent and promising to see. We're really trying to encourage more students to go into the field of education. We're seeing a lot more college graduates leaning towards STEM, which is, you know, science, technology, engineering, and mechanics. And so we're really trying to push for them to get into the field of education. We're also a part of the Delaware Valley Coalition of Equity and Excellence, and we've gone to trainings at UPenn actually for different cultural proficiency programming. And if we can go to our next slide, Bob. Thank you. In the past couple of years, 72 educators have received implicit bias training by the Peace Center. And our software reports diverse candidates to assist with recruitment. And we've reviewed staff placement to diversify all of our schools. And I think across all of our schools now, we do have diverse staff in each of our elementary schools, at least, and in our middle schools and high school. And last year, Jerry Moore and myself went to the high school to talk to our cultural clubs about going into education. And we really felt like that was a really important need and something that, you know, the students were able to actually voice a lot of things that were deterring them from going to education. And so it was a really good time to kind of hear what they had to say, and also show them the other perspective of why, if they go into education, they can be a part of the change, and also, not let that happen to other students of color in the future. And we don't have any current reporting for our diverse staff for this year because of everything that's been going on with the pandemic. But June of last year and September of 2019, we have hired 3 African-American administrators and 1 white administrator. And across the district, we had 12 teachers, 3 Asian, 3 African-American, and 43 white. And with the implementation of full-day kindergarten last year, or this past year, we had 35.7 kindergarten hires, and that broke down to 2 Asians, 3 African-Americans, and 9 white teachers. And so that was definitely something that we wanted to highlight, but also we know that we are still not where we want to be as a district. I don't know if Dr. Kim, if you want to jump in.
If I may, and I do want to make a correction, it is actually 12% of teachers that are of educators of color. I thought I heard you say 12 teachers. It's actually 12%. Okay, and so again, finishing my week number 2 here, I was trying to understand, well, why do we separate out kindergarten teachers compared to all the other teachers? And one of the things that I did learn was that the school year we just finished is the first time where we actually implemented full-day kindergarten. So it definitely made sense to see, we had lots of vacancies, especially in kindergarten area. So let's see how we did in terms of diversifying our professional pool there. So I have to say candidly that it's almost 36% of our hires, especially in kindergarten, they are educators of color. So while, as Mr. Yum said, we have ways to go, it's comforting to know that at least for the new members of our school district, the kindergarten students are actually seeing a lot more educators of color than others have done in the past. So it's definitely, we're heading in the right direction and shows a lot of promise. But at the same time, our work is not done, but we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Dr. Kim, before we move to goal 4, do you want to also maybe just speak quickly just about our profession in general, as far as just teachers in general not really going into education, and why some of these efforts that we're making to kind of go outside the norm are so important?
Absolutely. So I am sure that my predecessor, Dr. McHugh, has shared on many occasions that statistically, the Pennsylvania Department of Education has shown in terms of data-wise that they are issuing fewer teaching certifications, and that has been the case for the past few years at least. And when economy, is doing well, fewer people tend to go into education. That's traditionally what the research has shown. Now, however, with COVID, we'll need to see if more people are going to education because more folks are unemployed. So with that said, fewer teaching starts are being issued, and when we delve into that, so we have a smaller number of people going to education to begin with, and to look to see how many educators of colors make up that, it's even fewer. So we do need to be thinking outside the box, how we recruit and do a lot more strategic approaches to recruiting and plus retention. Oftentimes a lot of effort is put into recruiting teachers of color or educators of color or just employees of color to begin with. But then what are we doing to set them up for success? So, I think a lot of time on, what do we do to support them and set them up for success is something that we're definitely exploring as well. But thank you for noting that, Dr. Waters.
Okay, so I'm Nick Taylor again, and Dr. Dieg, we're the co-chairs for this goal. And again, any important initiative by a school district, the success of it is contingent on how much you get stakeholders' involvement. So this goal really speaks to that. How much are we getting the community, other staff members, other school districts, families, et cetera, involved in our cultural proficiency measures. So a big part of this was collecting feedback from community members. The Hanover climate survey data was sent out to parents, I believe, at the end of the 2019 school year, if I'm not mistaken. And that provided some critical feedback to get a sense of what many people are feeling about cultural equity within our district. And so from here, with goal 4 is to make sure that we're setting up opportunities for parents to increase their involvement with our cultural proficiency efforts, as well as to continue to solicit their feedback. A CARE symposium was held, I believe, last year, which was a very effective event to continue the important conversation needs to be had in our efforts to make sure that we are increasing cultural equity within the district. And in terms of the students, getting the students more involved. And Dr. Day is going to speak to some of the measures that we've taken this year and making sure that we have more students from North Penn, especially from the high school, specifically from the high school, not only get involved in cultural equity work, but now connecting with districts and other districts throughout Montgomery County and increasing and augmenting discussions for cultural equity. We can go to the next slide. And so Dr. Day is going to speak to the progress we've been making regarding that.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So between 2018 and 2020, some of the highlighted progress that we've made. So at the very beginning, we talked about just making sure that it was very important that if cultural proficiency and racial and ethnic equality was so important for North Penn, we wanted to make sure that we created a vision for cultural proficiency that was not only shared amongst our staff and our students, but also shared with the parents in the district. In 2018, we held a CARE symposium, and CARE stands for Conversations About Race and Ethnicity. It was very well attended, and during that time, we invited parents and staff within the district to just come in and have an open forum and talk about their interactions within the district, how they felt things were going, share some of their stories as well as their stories for their students. And through that CARE symposium, one of the biggest things that we heard back in reference to feedback was wanting to have a parent group. We had a parent group many years ago, and we wanted to resurrect that. So what we did following the CARE symposium, there is a parent group in Abington School District that had met with such success. So we invited that parent group to come and speak to our parents and share, their highlights, how they started, and they shared how much that they've grown and what we can do in reference to our North Penn district and our parents, and how can we start a parent group, or what could we look for in reference to how to create it and how it can grow. This past year, we held our second annual Black History Month oratorical competition, and that was just a great way to highlight not only Black History Month, but highlight all of the skills and talents that students across the district from elementary school to high school. So also one of the groups that we work with in Goal 4 is the International Spring Festival Committee. That's a committee that's been very involved with the district for years, but we wanted to make sure that we diversified that group, and also just made sure that we opened up our doors and made sure that they knew within the realm of North Penn School District that we wanted to be more involved, and we've been doing that. And also had the plan of having the students who won the Black History Month oratorical competition come and perform at the International Spring Festival. This past November, we started the formation of the parent group around equity. We had about 2 or 3 meetings prior to COVID having us not be able to carry it along, but great conversations, like hearing parents again and their stories and what they wanted to do, sharing the data that we're sharing with you all tonight as well. And then one of the biggest things that we've done over the past year is just highlighted our student group. So making sure that we reached out to students across middle and high school of various backgrounds and having them do things such as the NAACP mock trial, where Dr. Waters and I chaperoned. We had a couple of students come with us. We had another parent in the district who's a lawyer talk about mock trials and gave the students a trial and had them go in different lanes and talk about what the process is and what it would be like if you wanted to potentially go into the field of law. North Penn High School had a cadre this year, where in the past we've had cadres of staff members and educating them about cultural competency. And this year we implemented not only staff members, but a staff member and student cohort. and having the students feel as though that they had a lens where they can talk to their teachers who are in the buildings with them and be able to have these open conversations about race and ethnicity. Next slide, please. So I'll highlight a couple things that we're still working on. So there were a couple of things that we noticed that within our school district, that when we do hire staff members of color, we want to make sure that we are able to give them more support. So this year, one of the plans was to work on affinity groups. And for those of you who don't know, it's just making sure that we have an extra lens or extra mentor system for our staff members of color so that we can be a support to them for not only the things that they may need educational wise as teachers or administrators, but that personal and that interpersonal connection as well. One of the other things that we did through the HR lens that Mr. Yum mentioned was the training of support staff professionals on implicit bias. So we had, I want to say, 3 or 4 meetings where we met with some transportation people, secretaries, ESC personnel, because the reality is that all staff members throughout the district all are going to have some type of interaction with children, and especially children of color. We want to make sure that they were very educated in, the history and the biases, and make sure that they are aware of their own biases as well. Mr. Tilley, do you want to do some of the others?
Yes, in terms of the training for staff professionals, at least at the high school, we've been working with Dr. Fergus, Eduardo Fergus from Temple University, who Dr. Rufo referenced earlier, where there was a session that he met with all 300 plus teachers and support staff to discuss disproportionality data, to look at the actual data that exists for North Penn, and to start the conversation for teachers to become aware of it, so that way they can start to plan how to try to mitigate the factors that lead to disproportionality. We had one professional development on it, and then ultimately there was another one that's going to be coming up later in the year, but unfortunately we didn't get to it with the school closure shutdown. Considering that we still have to figure out what school's going to look like next year, I'm very confident that we still will be able to get more of that professional development with Dr. Fergus, with the teachers at the high school. Another thing that we did more internally is we had 2 teachers who are part of the high school culture cadre come up with a professional development with the high school teachers, where they spent an afternoon taking the Harvard implicit bias assessment. So we asked that they choose 3 tests, because there's a battery of tests for that for the Harvard implicit bias test. So we asked them to take 3 out of the however many within the battery, and then to just reflect on the results. And then the next step for the next professional development was for the teachers then to start to review and reflect more openly with each other on what their findings were. Of course, very tactfully and catered, because this is a very sensitive topic for many people. There's a great deal of discomfort that some people may feel when engaging these conversations. But we were going to have the conversations and then plan moving forward, how can we make our classrooms be more culturally responsive, especially in light of what the revelation of our own biases. But unfortunately, with the school closure, we didn't get to that. So these are things that we're hoping moving forward we'll be able to get to as soon as we get a greater idea of what school will look like. In terms of our MTSS process, and if you're not familiar with TIMS, it's basically multi-tier system of supports, if I'm pronouncing that or describing that correctly. But ultimately, it's doing several tiers of interventions to try to better support students. Especially traditionally, it's prior to them being identified with possibly needing a special education evaluation. The way we're doing at the high school is to make sure that we're offering multiple tiers to ensure that students, we can get them to the best educational or social outcomes that we can for them at the high school. So the group of teachers, we meet and come up with 1 tier. If that's not working, then we so on and so forth. Ultimately, it's about 3 tiers. So at the high school level, what we realize is that because the high school is broken up into 3 different home offices, sophomore, junior, senior, we realized that there was a lack of coherence in how we were doing it. So now all 3 offices are we spent a couple of days, throughout the last few months, coming together, and we plan throughout the rest of the summer to come together to make sure that we have a coherent structure in place for how we will make MTSS as well as child study much more efficient, and it can be more efficiently run, so that way we're reaching a lot more students and getting the supports, and a lot more students are not being, because of time restrictions, are not being, held back from receiving the attention that they need. So that is a huge component of cultural proficiency, because now with the training that we're putting teachers through, we would hope that the lenses that they're looking through in terms of identifying students, especially with the disproportionality data showing that, our students of color tend to receive more discipline than white students. So with the revelation that our teachers will be going through with cultural proficiency training, hopefully they have that lens going into these MTSS meetings, as well as the child study teams, to make sure that they have a more holistic and culturally responsive approach to supporting our students, who again are the ones who are being placed at disadvantage because of our disproportionality data, as well as using MTSS as an opportunity to really, the teachers can try to figure out sort of the factors that continue to cause our disproportionality, and to see how we can continue to reduce that as well.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add to one of the points that Dr. Dieg made about our support staff. Due to the closure, and you heard a lot of things, unfortunately, have to be rescheduled or kind of pushed off a little bit due to the pandemic. But one of the things that Dr. Dietrich thought was really important, and it was an excellent idea, was to use some of this time while we were closed to make sure that our support staff was engaged in this work. And so a team of us put together some modules around cultural proficiency. We included implicit bias, we included stereotypes, we included microaggressions, and groups who couldn't, really do some of the work that they typically do when we're in school from home, like bus drivers who obviously couldn't drive any students, or, the food services staff who maybe wasn't involved in delivering the meals and things that they were doing at a lot of our buildings. They were engaged in this work. So for the last 7-8 weeks, they worked through modules that our team created, and it was really, I think, eye-opening for them. I think in the beginning they were kind of like, why do I have to do this? But by the end, so many of them reached out to us to just kind of say, like, thank you. Now I'm going to really, pay more attention when my students get on the bus, because I'm the first face that some of them see. Or, perhaps in food services, I'm going to be more understanding, when maybe they come through the line and they're coming to our country for the first time. So I think it was very reflective for them. And it's just really important that everybody is on board with this work. It can't just be administrators or classroom teachers. And we have all been trained, and again, we still have to continue to do that, and this will be ongoing, but it's really important that every single group is involved and engaged in the work. So I just wanted to add that point. But thank you to all of the co-chairs for that. And I think
Dr. Waters, I just wanted to jump in for a minute. There were a few questions that came through in the chat that I just thought would be a good point to answer it. One of them was about how have these efforts been received, and just, we've done a lot the past couple of years, so thank you for that recognition. And I think overall, and is the school board supportive? Is the community supportive? Our school board's very supportive of our efforts. I want to be very honest in terms of, and frank, that while we've done all this, we know that we still have more work to do. And I recently had Dr. Santoro and I had a really honest conversation with someone where we were asked, well, is there a race problem in North Penn? Is that why we're doing all of this? And my answer to that was, I think that North Penn is reflective of our country, right? So just because we're in North Penn doesn't mean that we're not exposed to those same problems that present across the country. And so, what I think we are doing is we're really addressing them. We're trying to take it head on and address it courageously and work with people. So I think in terms of how those efforts have been received overall very well. But of course, there's going to be some people who aren't on board, and that's something that we have to continue to address with our community, with our staff, with our students, and just making sure that we have a really inclusive and diverse and welcoming climate. The second question was just, will any of these issues intersect with our work on trauma-informed classrooms? We have done some professional development on trauma, actually, not necessarily this year, but the year prior. And while there are similarities, we also have been very cautious so as not to merge the lines too much, because we don't want people to assume that people of color are acting in a certain way just because of trauma. So while there's some overlap in terms of some of the strategies with culturally responsive teaching and trauma-informed instruction, we just want to make it very clear that those issues are not always commingled, and we don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes. All right, and I think we're going to move into Ms. Kumbi Rudnick, who is here as our parent from Montgomery, to share about some work that's done in her building that she is leading along with the principal there and the other parents. And I think, one of our missing pieces that we feel is having some more parents who are involved. So we're really excited to have Kumbi with us here tonight and to share what they're doing at Montgomery, and hopefully some individuals on this call will be interested in picking up on their buildings as well. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jenna, and good evening again to everyone. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the North Penn administration. As you've seen, they're doing a lot of incredible work in this space. I certainly been very excited by what I've seen over the last probably year and a half or so that I've been involved in the parent group. For Montgomery Elementary, we have a multicultural committee, and it's made up of an incredible group of parents. As you can see, you see their pictures here. And we all really bring different things to the table. And that diversity of thought and process is something that I believe has enabled us to be very successful. And in creating this committee, I've been at Montgomery, as I said, for about 6 years now. And I had a couple of, some background, I had a couple of occasions to have engagement with other parents that made me pause and made me think that we were a diverse school, but we weren't very inclusive, and we didn't act inclusively often enough. And to that point, there was also the issue, as has been mentioned, about representation, right? At Montgomery, my two daughters, I have not yet had a Black teacher, which is not what I grew up with. And this was another thing that gave me room to pause and made me think, well, I need to take some action and be a part of the solution. The school district is doing everything they can to try to procure teachers, a diverse slate of candidates, but what can I do in the meantime to plug that space? And so I started to get involved in Montgomery. I wanted to be in the building more. As I stated, I am a working parent, but I felt this was important enough to make some time to engage and be a part of it. And it was in trying to be a part of it that I started to detect some microaggressions that made me feel like backing away. And I bring this up because all of us as parents, want to do everything that's right for our children. And a lot of parents are, believe they're not racist, right? But that's why I love that this is called anti-racism, because it's not enough not to be racist. You have to be welcoming, you have to be inclusive, you have to want to engage. And so I took these thoughts to the principal, who was very welcoming and supportive of us starting this committee. And I was very intentional in the group that you see before you, because we have people of different faiths, we have clearly ethnicities, we have a couple of male parents, which was very important for me. And I mean, we have a parent that has a child with a disability. And having that diversity of thought and of lenses was something that was really important for me in ensuring that this committee would be successful. And with our principal's help, we were able to really pinpoint the right people and be intentional about asking them to join this committee. And I'm so glad that they said yes. So in the next slide, I'm going to be able to share with you our mission and vision. So we took a very standard approach to this. So we have a committee. Now let's think through what we need to do to be able to share with the parents at Montgomery why we exist. So our mission is to foster an inclusive community environment at Montgomery Elementary that celebrates our diverse community while enabling every student, family, and staff member to thrive. We will encourage everyone to bring their whole selves to school, share their unique experiences, and seek to understand others. Our vision is that Montgomery Elementary students, parents, guardians, and employees feel a sense of pride and joy in an inclusive Montgomery community. So as I had stated, we are certainly a diverse community. What we are trying to drive to is an inclusive community, and community, sorry, and that means that everyone feels a sense of belonging. So you can include me, and I believe I belong, but if you exclude me, and even if I believe I don't belong, my environment and the support I feel will be different. And that's where these conversations are uncomfortable, but they're necessary. A lot of us, myself included, I was 2 years in Montgomery before I realized I had to take an action, and that representation matters includes me being present. You know, so we are all doing our best until we learn that we can do more. And so what does that more look like for our committee? In the next slide, you can see some of the multifaceted approaches that we have taken. So we are now really involved in our home and school Facebook page and are very intentional about some of the communications we share there. These are things that we hadn't typically seen from a multicultural lens on our Facebook page, and we decided to, start providing content and being a part of that page. In addition, we created a YouTube channel for the school. It right now only has 3 to 4 pieces of content, but there's content there for parents to engage with and for their children to engage with if they so choose. In addition, we started being more, again, intentional and deliberate about our artistic displays. So for the entire time I've been in Montgomery anyway, I've never noticed a multicultural holiday celebration. So one that's taken, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and the Nativity and Christianity into the same space. And we did that this year, last year, I guess end of last year at Montgomery, but we didn't just put a display together. And this is again where diversity of thought matters. I think one of the parents were talking about, oh, we should do a display and this is what it could look like. And another parent suggested, oh, why don't we actually give the students a description of what Kwanzaa means, what Hanukkah means, what does Christmas mean? And that was taking that to a new level. It was not superficial. And that's one of the things that we try to do, is we need to try to move the needle. And there are lots of things that we can do that can be superficial, but there's plenty more that we can do that actually moves the needle. Again, thinking about the students in mind, our children, and trying to ensure that they have a sense of belonging. So we did something similar with Black History Month and also with Women's History Month. Educational resources, we have a parent that's donated a number of books to the school, and that's, her taking ownership of ensuring that there's content at the school that not just our kids, again, it's not about just the Black kids at the school. In order for us to move the community forward and society forward, it means that we're educating all the children at the school to ensure that they are all seeing people of color in a different lens. We did Black History Month trivia and Women's History Month trivia. So again, just taking that, supporting the teachers from a cultural proficiency perspective and trying to plug the holes wherever we see that there are current holes, and because we know our teachers are doing a lot and we're asking a lot of them, so where can we as parents step up? So in summation, my next slide shows just some of the things that we have accomplished to date and what we have currently as our next steps. So as I stated, we have a robust mission vision statement that ensures that the school body has clarity of our intent and our scope. We're focusing on creating an inclusive environment. And even from our first meeting, we talked about this. So that we talked about what was your experience amongst the 8 of us when you first came to Montgomery. You know, we had some folks who didn't get a hello from any of the other parents, right? And, you know, Montgomery tends to have some, you know, some groups of parents, you know, and it's hard to break in. And you know, they, again, it's all well-intentioned, everyone's living their best lives, but thinking through what does that mean for the other parents and for the other kids at the school is important. So we said, well, we're going to be that, you know, welcoming face at the school. We're going to deliberately say hello to people. We're going to proactively walk over to new parents and engage them. This is after, you know, parent orientation night. This is now you're at the ice cream social 2 weeks later, and you know, no one particularly is approaching you. What can we do? I already mentioned our multifaceted approach and our YouTube channel. We are obviously, again, proactively engaging diverse parents and asking them to be, you know, volunteers at the school. We're asking them to show up to events. And we're also asking them personally, I mean, Montgomery right now, we have, I think, 8 board members, and they are all white females. I would love to see a parent of color, a male, you know, some differences in that board to help us move the school forward. Again, everyone's well-intentioned, but that diversity of thought matters and is important. And we also have one of the parents in our group who's in the Cultural Proficiency Committee liaison for Montgomery. So those are some of the things that we're doing to date and will continue to work on. In addition to that, we are looking to incorporate other languages in our schools welcome communications. Again, some of these things some schools may already have this in place and some schools may be ahead of us, but we are starting from where we are. And that means, you know, we have, you know, a number of students or parents especially who may not be English speaking. We can't engage them if we cannot, if they don't understand, right? So some folks might say, well, you know, then people are not volunteering. They don't actually know they need to volunteer. So we need to work on that. We're also trying to incorporate more of a multicultural lens into our school events. And, you know, we have music playing at events. Let's incorporate some multiculturalism into that. We are looking, as we did last year, to ensure that we have a robust list of cultural events celebrated by our specific families. So we have a good understanding about the differences at the school and the number of nationalities and ethnicities that are within the school, and how we can support them by celebrating, you know, what they celebrate and what's important to them. And we're also working on a mural, at the school. So, you know, we have, again, a lot, we've accomplished a lot. There's more to do. We've had a great relationship as a group of 8. We've really leaned into the discomfort of our conversations. We've had some very interesting conversations, some very uncomfortable conversations, and these are necessary to move yourselves forward into becoming a stronger community. So lesson learned, I'd say that if you want a result that is truly high yield and inclusive, you have to build a variety of perspectives and experiences into the planning process. Having the diversity of thought yields results that consistently exceeds expectations. And for me, that means that you can, of course, if you want to host an event, for instance, and you want to have everyone agree, you're going to sort of do it with people that you understand that are similar and are like-minded. But if you really, really want it to be inclusive and to actually meet and exceed expectations, you need a sense of differences and you need to bring others in. So yes, doing it with the same people will give you a smooth event, a smooth planning process potentially. Doing it with others may be more complicated, but 100% of the time, you're going to get a better result. And that's my ask of all the parents out there. If you are a Black parent, a brown parent that's been hesitant about getting involved, I recommend that you please lean into that discomfort, because all children need it, not just your children, but all the other children need to learn from our experiences. They need to see, you know, brown parents and Black parents as coaches, as teachers. And North Penn can't do it themselves. They need to pull on the parent body to help them do that. And if you're a white parent at the school, I ask that you pause and you think about how you show up, and you think about how welcoming you are to other parents and how welcoming you encourage your children to be to other children of color. And with that, I think we can truly build a more inclusive and supportive community at North Penn. So thank you to the North Penn School District teachers and administration for giving me the time to speak to you all. I have my email address here on the presentation. I'm happy to, please reach out to me whenever to ask me questions or to see if you're thinking about setting up something similar at your school or you have already. We would love to learn from some of your successes as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Rudnick. I just wanted to kind of piggyback back off of that for one moment to discuss the Parent English Learner classes that we offered last spring. It was that we only were able to hold one class, and then COVID happened and we had to shut down. But I did want to let everyone know that next year we will be continuing to offer parent English classes at night, and those will be free and paid for by Title III funding. So just another opportunity that we're going to be extending moving forward.
Okay, Dr. Waters and Dr. Rufo, does this conclude the presentation? I saw it come down. I've been trying to keep up with all the questions. I did get a couple of shout out and text messages how great Ms. Kumbi Rudnick is. So thank you very much for your contributions. People seem to love your portion of the of the presentation the best. That's not a knock on anyone else. There was one question that I can kind of flag and say I'll answer that, and everyone else I've tried to answer as we've gone along, and then I'll start kicking questions that we received in advance of this presentation to the group. But the one question was, what does a district do if we do have a staff member that is not on board? And first, of course, in order to know that someone is not on board, either they would have to vocalize it or we'd have to see it in some capacity. We have had a majority, that's an overstatement perhaps, all of our staff is involved in cultural proficiency and equity work. We've received some questions about implicit bias training, and we are gradually going through a process of having all of our employees trained in implicit bias. However, if there is an overt act demonstrating that someone is not on board, then certainly that falls within the policies, recently adopted policies, and we would pursue that and address it. Dr. Mia Kim, while she just shared that she has only been with us for a short time, I'm sure she shares in Dr. McHugh and Dr. Dieg's mission, as well as helping us hold our staff members accountable as well. But it's certainly a team effort, and if you experience that, I would recommend that you bring it to an administrator's attention. So let's jump to some of the questions. So everybody be on your toes as I will come to you. I will read the question and then direct it to someone. And the first question, while we hit on some components of it, I'm going to bring some components that I don't believe we necessarily did hit on, or perhaps just add some detail. So question number one is, when examining the curricula, what specific components of cultural proficiency and anti-racist content do we lack in examining social studies and ELA curricula? But it's also important to not ignore any implications for math science and the specials. What steps do we take to make sure that these gaps are filled consistently and equitably throughout the district? And how do we make sure that the lens of DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, is brought to the table for curriculum adoption in the future? So there's a lot there to unpack. I'm going to kick that question to Ms. Early, because not only is she on that subcommittee, but she's also a curriculum supervisor. So I think she's probably the best person to answer that. Ms. Early.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. So that is a two-pronged approach when we're talking about updating our curriculum, but also updating our teachers' culturally responsive instruction. So we have made some strides in terms of examining our materials that we're adopting, not only for English and social studies, but all areas, making sure that we have diverse panels of teachers, making sure that we have cadre members, making sure we have teachers from special ed, really having that balanced view, kind of like what Ms. Rudnick talked about earlier on the parent committee. It's important that when we're adopting district approved resources, that we have a diverse group of individuals making those decisions that are putting the resources in our teachers' hands. So in addition to that, we have a lot more work to do, particularly for secondary English. We're looking to adopt a lot more literature from diverse text from diverse voices. So that's going to be very important that our students are reading voices that aren't from the traditional literary canon. So that's something that we're going to be continually working on last year, this year, and for the next many years until we feel that our literary canon is as diverse as our student population. So in addition to that, in terms of social studies, we have worked with the Teaching Tolerance Social Justice Standards and will continue to do so. And on top of, just really working on those culturally responsive instructional practices, because as our teachers gain more knowledge and more training in those particular areas, they'll be able to do a better job with that. On top of that, there were a few questions about African American history, and we did adopt an African American studies course at the high school that will be going live next year. Mr. Taylor may want to chime in on that, but that's something that will be going live next year. That was student-led. Students had a voice, wanted that class, so we made it happen, and we're really, really excited about that course. However, we want to make sure that we are doing our best because African American history is American history. So we need to really continue to work on how we are teaching American history and, continually lean into resources from Courageous Conversations, Facing History in Ourselves, and Teaching Tolerance to develop that skill set in all teachers. So that will be an ongoing project.
So Mr. Taylor, I know Ms. Early just opened the door for you, but I was kicking the next question to you anyway. So how about if you could infuse your response to this question with a bit more insights into the African American history course. So the next question here is, how aware are teachers to their cultural and racial biases and how that impacts their teaching and behavior in the classroom? So if you want to touch on the actual course, I know you were very involved in that and the resource selection, and then slide into the question about how aware are teachers of their own biases.
So the reason why we call it African American Studies as opposed to history is because it's going to be more a thematic approach to looking at history pertaining to the contribution of African Americans or the trials and tribulations that African American people went through. And really the crux of the course is going to be sharpening the students' critical reading, thinking, and writing skills, but then also to focus on that social emotional development where they feel more empowered to become advocates for social and racial justice, particularly social justice. In this course, there is going to be some instances in where intersectionality will be highlighted. So from the standpoint of African Americans trying to reach civil rights progress, how else does that now match up to what Hispanic Americans were going through, as well as there are going to be some instances in which LGBTQ will be discussed, because the students will be approaching this course a more project-based, problem-solving type of inquiry-based type of learning with this particular course. So again, the crux of it is using the historical content of African American history to not only sharpen the students' critical reading, writing, and thinking skills, but then also to empower them to develop advocacy skills. Now, in terms of this question, the question is, how aware are the teachers, right? So Mr. Nicholson, the principal of the high school, he's the one that had access to the data that I referenced earlier about the in-service day we had on March 11th, where the teachers were required to take a 3 tests out of the battery of tests that the Harvard Implicit Bias Assessment offers. And after for the 45-minute in-service period, they were to take the tests and then to answer questions through a Google form that shows that they're reflecting on that. And so Mr. Nicholson, if I could speak for what he revealed to us in one of our administrative meetings after the fact, said that the teachers seemed to show a greater awareness, and it was actually encouraging what some of the input was from the teachers from the results that they were seeing from the completion or their participation in the assessment. So I would say that optimistically, the teachers, at least at the high school, putting them through that has caused them to have at least a greater awareness of what their own potential implicit biases are. And then also what was mentioned before with Dr. Fergus leading a professional development with our teachers, I think back in October, so I can't remember. There was a discussion, and a part of the process, and then Dr. Rufo and Dr. Bauer can speak to this, where the teachers really had to try to reflect on why why the data was coming out the way it was coming out in terms of the disproportionality. And so I think part of that reflection hopefully would incite a lot of the teachers to become aware of their potential biases, or what they can assume other people's biases would be that contribute to the disproportionality data.
Great, thank you, Mr. Taylor. So the next question, I believe, was answered, and it was directed towards Dr. Waters. So I'm going to jump down to her next question, just so that she gets her chance. This question says, I was wondering if this is going to be a long-term initiative where we identify certain projects to conduct and then do them repeatedly, so this doesn't become a forgotten cause. Great question. Dr. Waters?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yes, this is definitely a long-term commitment. It's in our plan for our school district. It's something that we are all committed to and we believe in. And so it's something that's ongoing. We talk about it. It's a journey. It's not something that, you do for a short period of time and, we fixed everything. That's really not how this works. This is something that we are going to be doing continuously because we have to. We have to continue to make sure that we're all educated, that we're all learning and growing in this work. And, you've heard how, some people have had an opportunity to reflect on their biases. Like, everybody has them. And that's just the reality. And so what we have to continue to do is make sure that we're trained and educating ourselves so that we are aware of them and we do something about it. And so again, it's not a one and done. I know that sometimes in school districts, there might be something that comes through and you don't hear about it again the next year. That's not this. This is something that you're going to be hearing about for many, many years, because this is not something that gets, like I said, solved in a day. We're going to be working hard at this probably forever, as long as I'm here anyway.
Yes, I think the district's focus on the importance of the work is highlighted in your job title. So when Dr. Waters moved into that role, it used to be the Director of Curriculum. It is now Director of Curriculum and Equity, with a focus on the equity work. So the next question that we are going to field, we will go to Mr. Goslin and Ms. Early. You can decide who will tackle this one. Will African American history and how it has progressed be included more in the North Penn elementary and middle school curriculums moving forward, other than just Black History Month? So we did hear about the high school's new course and studies. So will it be included in elementary and middle school? My oldest child didn't have much in his curriculum other than one lesson on Martin Luther King Day. However, some of my younger children did learn a bit more about slavery and the Emancipation Proclamation. So Ms. Early or Mr. Goslin?
All right, well, certainly we want to continue, and we're always updating our curriculum. It's an active and dynamic process, right? one of the difficulties in adopting textbooks is that you're always kind of like working in hindsight. You adopt it and then the world continues to march on, right? And so I think one of the best things that we can do as a district is continue to engage with our parents and our faculty to keep the curriculum fresh, and supplement the materials that we have. And we have to broaden our idea that social studies is not just history, right? But it's also current events. And so one of the things that we need to also do is help kids make sense of the world they're living in currently as well, right? And so I think that incorporating a greater degree of current events can certainly help with that. And certainly we want to address the contributions of people of color, not just African Americans, but certainly African Americans, but indigenous communities, First Nations, Latino, and Asian students as well, and the histories of, because their history, as Rachel said earlier, is all of our history. But then also, like, where do those things go back, right? Because then when we reach back further, a lot of it tends to kind of become very Eurocentric. So, I mean, I think it's really empowering for, you know, a young Black student to know that, you know, you come from a deep and rich culture that, you know, traces back to Timbuktu and, you know, ancient kingdoms where, you know, you have this history before slavery too, right? So, like, I think that's one of the areas we could probably grow and expand at, certainly the elementary and middle school levels. And I know Rachel's been working on this and chairs this, so I'll let her add on as well.
Thanks, Mark. I agree. We are fortunate enough to not only do we have resources, but as Mark said, the textbook isn't our curriculum. We write our curriculum with a committee that includes resources. And we're fortunate enough with all of our K-12 technology access to utilize a multitude of resources, and that we will continue to do so as they're being updated. One of the benefits from the COVID closure is there's been a ton of companies who have offered a lot of resources for free, webinars, you know, student, you know, things that students can access. So we've been fortunate and we've been compiling them and are going to continue to turn around and offer them for teacher professional development, but also student resources. So I really want to hit home that the textbook, because it is static, because it is printed, and then students, you know, have that, you know, for 10 years, that's not something that is actually our curriculum. It's more than that. And that's really, really important. And on top of that, we, of course, are going to continue the work with Goal 1 and culturally responsive instruction, because we have our curriculum and our teachers' instruction, and they have to meet together in order to really achieve what we're talking about. And as Dr. Waters said, it's going to be a journey and an ongoing process for us.
Okay, I'm fielding these questions from all avenues via text, Q&A, and the survey. So let me jump in here, and I do want to save some time. How about one more question? Understand we have them all logged. We will reach out to you, but I want to leave some time here. We were hoping to finish this by 5:30, and I want to leave some time for our chairs, Dr. Rufo and Dr. Waters, to address next steps. So let me pull up our spreadsheet here. And how about, I'll go to Dr. Rufo, even though she says we've heard from her quite a bit. Dr. Rufo, how do we pair personal passion for anti-racist texts and social justice education with individual families' political preferences? Are we protected against the All Lives Matter parents if we show support for Black Lives Matter? And how uncomfortable should we be making middle school students as they read harrowing accounts of struggle, oppression, prejudice, and possible violence? So I believe this was actually coming from a teacher who is asking, you know, how do we balance the fact that we have students in our classrooms whose, when we were teaching Black Lives Matter, that the response in their household could be All Lives Matter?
Mm-hmm. So I think the idea that Black Lives Matter has become so politicized is somewhat of a reflection of just where we are as a society, because, you know, I read something recently about, you know, normalizing Blackness, and that it's not something that it should be associated with a political party. So I think as educators, it's really our duty and our responsibility to be instilling those values, that, you know, any kind of difference, whether it is skin color or ability or sexuality, that that we have an environment where students are welcome and where our staff is supportive, and understanding, as I had mentioned earlier, that they're really, the climate that we're in currently, you know, North Penn is not immune to that. So it takes a lot of sensitivity and attention to be addressing these matters thoughtfully. But I think, as you know, this was a question that we received from a teacher, that you certainly have the support of the administration and of the school board for advocating for your students, for really addressing some of these things that come up. And that, you know, we're not necessarily seeing this as something that is political, but as something that is very necessary and very important to us as a community.
Great, thank you, Dr. Rufo. So I would like to pass it to Dr. Waters at this time. I believe we're going to talk about next steps and then some closing remarks.
Okay, so thanks. So for next steps, many of you joined this call tonight, and it was stated at the beginning, we are really grateful and thankful and really look forward to partnering with you. It is really important that we work together to make change, and we're all here. There are a lot of administrators on this executive committee, and again, we're just really, really dedicated to doing what we can to improve. So one of the things that I know you've heard the word cadre quite a bit, and I'm not sure if everybody knows exactly what that is. I kind of thought about that early on, didn't want to interrupt, but basically at each of our schools, they have what we call a cultural proficiency cadre. And that's a team of teachers and staff who have gotten training, or they continue to get training from Dr. Barbara Moore Williams. She is also a consultant in our school district, and she's been working with us for many, many years on cultural proficiency. And she meets with the teachers, who are then in turn going back to the buildings to do some training with their own staff. So it looks different in every building, and I just saw another question in the chat about, you know, how do we boost that in the schools that have lower attendance? That is something that Dr. Santoro, you know, she oversees our elementary schools, and Dr. Bauer oversees our secondary schools, and that's something that is really important to all of us. And so we just recently met with the principals and kind of reviewed expectations for this coming year. They have goals that they always come up with as a building to support our efforts, and they're going to be aligning their goals this year with our goals that you got to hear tonight. They work with the cadres in their schools to do some of the things that you heard discussed on this call, some of the things that Mrs. Rudnick talked about them doing at Montgomery. Some teachers may be doing some of those things already as part of the cadre in the buildings, but it is very true that some schools have more participation than others for many different reasons. And so what we're really trying to do this year, I was able to meet with all of the teams to kind of get a feel for where they are, make suggestions and recommendations. A lot of what I recommend is things I've heard at another school where it's going really well, or maybe they have a team who is just more in the journey. And there's other schools where, you know what, they're new to it, but they are eager and they're motivated, and they're like, what can I do to help? And so they're getting the training. They stay after school for that, again with our consultant, and then they come back and basically kind of teach the rest of the staff what they're learning. And that's one of the things that we're hoping for next steps for you on the call tonight, is that you will support the efforts that are happening in your school, no matter where they are. You have to meet them where they are, but wherever they are, we are hoping that you'll be willing to partner with them, or perhaps even start a multicultural committee like Mrs. Rudnick and the other Montgomery parents decided to do, but basically to support what's happening there and just make it even better. So please know that the principals at every school, they know who expressed an interest on this call tonight, and they're waiting to have you come and help support in however that looks. Maybe for some of you, it's starting a committee. Maybe for some of you, it's just meeting with the cadre at the school to say, hey, tell me a little bit about what you've done. And maybe you can only support on a Friday night at an event, and that's fine. Whatever you can do to help, we'll take it. But we appreciate your time tonight. We appreciate your willingness to want to know about North Penn and our efforts, and anything that you do moving forward with us. We are really looking forward, again, to just tightening up our partnership. We do have a parent group already in existence. I know we would love to make sure that we're represented, have representation from every school. And so that might be another opportunity for a few of you, but we really are looking forward to you supporting the work at the building level. And again, really appreciate you taking the time out to hear us tonight and get some of your questions answered. So Dr. Rufo, I'll let you wrap up.
Sure, thank you. And I think in terms of how can you get involved, if you are interested in any of those things that Dr. Waters mentioned, I would either email, you may email either Dr. Waters or me or your principal directly. And as she mentioned, we do have a spreadsheet of everyone following that initial communication who reached out to us. So if we have a school where we don't have a parent who has reached out to us, then we'll be reaching out to you. But we really do want some parent leaders. We don't necessarily want this to just be us as administrators, as teachers, as a school district saying, hey parents, here's what we want you to do. We want to know what you feel would be helpful, and we would really appreciate you leading these efforts with us. So please feel free to reach out to any of us or your principal directly in terms of getting this up and moving. So thank you very much.
I'd just like to amplify what was said by Deanna and Jenna, and that is that, we really wanted you to be able to tune in today to hear what we're doing and to give us feedback on that. So if you say, love it, love it, love it for these things, and what about this, and maybe couldn't you do that? Or conversely, if you say, why are you doing that? Don't just end it with, logging off today and then continuing with the rest of, your life. You need to really continue to be engaged with us. So please do respond to our call for action. We sent those letters out. That was a call for action. We need to have our entire community engaged. Again, I'm very appreciative of those who committed to do this and to follow along today with what you saw in the presentation and our attempt to answer your questions. But please don't let it end here. Please do get involved either at the school level or get involved with our group that's a part of Goal 4. I know I stopped by those meetings, and I'd like to see more people at those meetings. It would be helpful if we could have some additional individuals that are willing to commit to being a part of that family engagement goal that we have for Goal 4. And then, as was stated, be involved at the grassroots level at your schools and help to make change. We don't want this just to be, something that is brought to the attention of the community and then it, dies out and people go on with their lives. You really need to be engaged, help us. So send us feedback on what you loved about what you heard today. Send us feedback on what you're not so sure about, or even things that you don't understand why we're doing that. You have other suggestions for us, and we'd appreciate that feedback. And then do get involved. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate all of you very much.
Thank you, everyone.